Hollow Creek Station stood silent. Tumbleweeds rolled down the cracked asphalt. The wind howled through broken windows. Aiden shivered. The place felt empty, lonely.
He stared up at the rusted sign. Hollow Creek Station. It read in faded paint. A chill ran down his spine. Why had he agreed to come here? This place was creepy.
His friends Max and Chloe had already disappeared inside. Aiden took a deep breath. He hated being the scaredy cat. Sucking in his fear, he pushed open the creaking door. The station moaned. Inside, the air hung heavy and cold. Dust swirled in the faint light filtering through grimy windows. Cobwebs clung to everything. The place smelled old, like something had died here.
See, I told you it wasn't locked, Max said, grinning. He held up a rusty padlock. It looked ancient. Let's explore, Chloe said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Aiden knew that look. It meant trouble. I heard there's a tunnel down the tracks, Max whispered. They say it's haunted. Aiden's heart thumped. Haunted. This just got worse.
The tunnel yawned before them, a black maw swallowing the light. Rails disappeared into the abyss. Aiden felt a tremor of fear. He hated the dark.
Come on, scaredy cat, Chloe said, already halfway in. Her voice echoed strangely. Aiden hesitated. He had a bad feeling about this.
Max nudged him, a mischievous glint in his eyes.
Don't worry, we'll protect you. Aiden knew it was a lie. He was on his own. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the darkness.
The air turned cold and damp. The smell of mildew filled Aiden's nostrils. He stumbled after his friends, his hand trailing along the rough stone wall. The darkness pressed in.
What's that? Chloe's voice was hushed. Aiden caught up to them. They stood before a section of wall covered in strange symbols. They looked ancient, evil.
Aiden felt a shiver run down his spine. He couldn't look away. The symbols seemed to pulsate, like they were alive. He had an overwhelming urge to run. Section 5. The Abandoned Train Car. They continued down the tunnel, the silence broken only by their footsteps and heavy breathing. The air grew colder, the darkness thicker.
I feel a presence, watching us.
Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a large cavern. In the center sat a dilapidated train car. Its windows were dark, the paint peeling.
Whoa.
Max breathed, his usual bravado gone. Even he seemed unnerved. Aiden felt a cold hand grip his heart. He just wanted to leave. Section 6. A Voice in the Dark. They approached the train car cautiously. The silence was deafening. Then a sound. A faint thumping, coming from inside the train. Chloe called out. Her voice echoed eerily in the cavern. The thumping stopped. Aiden held his breath. Waiting. S1. Media. Person waiting nervously in a dark tunnel. Close-up of someone whispering, "Hello?" in a dark space. "Hello?"
Help me.
Aiden jumped back. His blood ran cold. Section 7. Moving Shadows.
They backed away from the train car, hearts pounding.
The voice echoed after them, filled with despair. Aiden's fear turned to ice in his veins.
As they hurried away, Aiden noticed something else. Shadows, flickering at the edge of his vision. They seemed to dance and writhe, like they were alive. Did you see that?
He whispered, his voice trembling. Max and Chloe exchanged nervous glances. They had seen it too. The shadows were closing in. Section 8. The Tunnel Shifts. Panic surged through Aiden. He wanted to run, but where? The walls seemed to close in on him, the air thick with an oppressive weight. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in the confined space. He could hear his own ragged breathing, a stark reminder of his growing fear. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly before and behind them. There was no escape. The darkness was suffocating, an endless void that swallowed all light. Every step he took felt like it led him deeper into the abyss. The walls seemed to pulse, as if alive, mocking his every move. He could feel the cold, damp air clinging to his skin, sending shivers down his spine. He stumbled, his foot catching on something hard. He looked down. The object was barely visible in the dim light, but it was enough to throw him off balance. He reached out, trying to steady himself against the wall, but the surface was slick and unyielding. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the shifting environment. The ground was no longer smooth. It was uneven, twisted, wrong. The once familiar path had transformed into a treacherous terrain. Each step was a gamble, the risk of falling ever present. The floor seemed to writhe beneath his feet, as if trying to throw him off. He could feel the ground shifting, changing, as if it had a mind of its own. Max shouted, pointing down a narrow passage. The tunnel was changing, shifting around them. The walls seemed to move, closing in one moment and expanding the next. It was as if the tunnel was alive, reacting to their presence. Max's voice was a lifeline, cutting through the chaos. "This way!" he yelled, his voice filled with urgency. A wave of dizziness washed over Aiden. The world spun around him, the tunnel a blur of shadows and light. He felt disoriented, his sense of direction slipping away. The dizziness was overwhelming, a physical manifestation of his fear. He tried to focus, to find a point of stability, but the shifting tunnel made it impossible. He felt sick. The nausea was a constant companion, a reminder of his vulnerability. He could feel the bile rising in his throat, the taste bitter and acrid. He wanted to scream, to cry out for help, but his voice was lost in the darkness. S1. Media. Person looking sick in eerie tunnel. Man feeling unwell in abandoned corridor. "This way!" Max's voice was a beacon, guiding him through the chaos. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the journey ahead. The tunnel may have been shifting, but he was determined to find a way out. Section 9. The Hidden Room. This chapter unveils the secrets hidden deep within the earth, where few dare to venture. They squeezed through the narrow passage, the walls closing in. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the sound of their own breathing echoed around them. Aiden felt like he was being crushed. Every step forward was a battle against the overwhelming sense of claustrophobia. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat louder than the last. Then, just as suddenly, they emerged into another cavern. The transition was so abrupt it felt like stepping into another world, this one smaller, with a low ceiling. The air was cooler here, and the walls seemed to close in even more. In the center of the room sat a wooden table. It looked ancient, its surface worn and scarred by time. Upon it lay a stack of dusty journals. Each one seemed to hold a story, a piece of the past waiting to be uncovered. A single flickering lantern illuminated the scene with an eerie glow. Shadows danced on the walls, creating an atmosphere of mystery and suspense. Aiden reached for a journal, his hand trembling. The anticipation of what he might find inside was almost too much to bear. The cover felt cold and damp. He opened it slowly, the pages crackling with age. The pages were filled with faded ink and frantic handwriting. Each word seemed to scream out a warning from the past. He began to read aloud. His voice echoed in the small room, mingling with the flickering light of the lantern.
"The tunnel. It's cursed. Voices. Shadows." The words sent a chill down Aiden's spine. "It wants to trap us." The final words hung in the air, heavy with dread. Aiden looked around. The shadows seemed to move closer, as if the room itself was alive. He could feel the weight of the room pressing down on him, the air growing colder with each passing second. The hidden room was not just a place, it was a living entity, a guardian of secrets long forgotten. With trembling hands, Aiden closed the journal. He knew that whatever secrets the room held, they were not meant to be disturbed. He glanced back at the narrow passageway they had come through, a sense of foreboding washing over him. Leaving the room felt like abandoning a part of himself, but staying was not an option. As they made their way back through the passage, the shadows seemed to follow, whispering secrets of the past. The hidden room had revealed its mysteries, but at what cost? The passageway faded into darkness behind them, the hidden room once again becoming a secret, waiting for the next soul brave enough to uncover its truths.
Section 10. Escape and Collapse. This is the story of a night that would forever change the lives of Aiden and Max.
The tunnel. It's cursed. Voices. Shadows. They say the whispers of the damned echo through these walls, and the shadows are the souls trapped within. It wants to trap us. It feeds on our fear and despair, growing stronger with every moment we spend here.
Aiden read, his voice shaking. The journal was old, its pages yellowed and brittle, filled with the accounts of those who had come before them. The journal spoke of a darkness that consumed those who dared to enter the tunnel. It detailed the horrors faced by previous explorers, their fates sealed by the malevolent force within. Suddenly, the lantern flickered and died. The only source of light they had was gone, leaving them vulnerable to the darkness. The room was plunged into absolute darkness. The air grew cold, and an oppressive silence filled the space. A blood-curdling scream pierced the air. It was a scream of pure terror, echoing through the tunnel and sending chills down their spines. Aiden didn't hesitate. He scrambled back through the passage, his heart pounding in his chest. The walls seemed to close in on him, the darkness pressing from all sides. Max right behind him. They burst out of the tunnel entrance just as the ground rumbled and gave way. The earth shook violently, and the sound of collapsing rock filled the air. The tunnel collapsed behind them, sealing the curse within. Dust and debris filled the air, and the entrance was completely blocked. But Aiden knew deep down that the darkness was still out there. It was a malevolent force waiting for its next victim. Waiting. S1. Media. Person calling out in fear. Person shouting in dark tunnel. Chloe! The name echoed in the darkness, a reminder that the curse was far from over. Aiden and Max stood there, catching their breath, their minds racing. They had escaped, but at what cost? The curse was still alive, and they knew they had to find a way to stop it for good. They would need to return to the journal, to uncover more about the curse and find a way to break it. Their journey was far from over, and the darkness would not rest until it was defeated. With a final glance at the collapsed tunnel, Aiden and Max walked away, determined to end the curse once and for all. The darkness may have won this battle, but the war was far from over.